Brilliant lineup for you today, right? And first we have Roger, I believe, and Roger, I'm going to, because your accolades are so long and varied, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself, if you will.
Okay. Hi everybody. So I'm Roger McKenzie. I'm one of the assistant general secretaries of UNISON. Been around for ages, basically doing organising anti-racist work since I could walk and talk, basically. It's just something, and I have to do anti-racism work because, frankly, it's a matter of life and death, and has been in the past for me when I've been attacked in my home and in the street and stuff. So for me, that's just what I do. So that's me. That's my introduction. Should we get the even longer introduction from Patrick? Because his is
yes, please. And Dr. Patrick Vernon, would you mind introducing yourself today?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Patrick Vernon. Hi, everyone. I'm a UNISON member for many years, and the reason why I'm a UNISON member because I've worked in health and social care for many years. Just like Roger, I've been involved as an activist campaigner on all kind of issues as well, and which is important. And also I do a lot of stuff on Black history and heritage as well. And just come out called 100 Great Black Britons, and yeah, and that's tomorrow. I can talk more, but I'll stop there.
Great, thank you very much. And believe me, you know, both Patrick and Roger, there was a real buzz of excitement once when we told people that you guys were going to be on this event. So so welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to be here. I believe we're going to start. Roger, were you going to start to tell people a little bit about what you do and
well, I think given that Patrick is gonna leave for a little while at 6:30, I thought we'd start with Patrick just to kick off with his journey. Basically, I think is what we've been asked to do. So I don't know if you want to kick off, Patrick.
Okay, I'll do part one of the journey.
Yeah.
We'll do part two later.
Cool.
So part one of the journey, what can I start? So yeah, so my parents, you have to start with your parents, not you. So my parents, they part of the Winner generation. They came from Jamaica in the late 50s, moved to Wolverhampton. They're still in Wolverhampton, by the way. Is it tier 2 or tier 3? I can't keep up now.
I think they're in 2.
2, yeah. And London's going to be in 2 quite soon, actually. So my parents are shielding all that. They're still going in the 80s, and they came to Wolverhampton in the late 1950s. My dad worked in Redland Pipes manufacturing. My mum worked in various hotels and raised me and my 4 sisters. And so they've been married now for how long? This year it will be the 61st anniversary of being married. And yeah, it's amazing that 60 odd years. What happens in 60 odd years? So yeah, so there's about 3.5 generations of Vernons in Wolverhampton now. And I suppose with growing up in a traditional kind of Jamaican household, forced to go to school, church on Sunday, rice and peas when we come back.
Yeah, I know that.
You know what I mean? Where you wear your Sunday best and that kind of stuff, and but it was growing up in Wolverhampton in the 60s and 70s was hostile, as Roger just alluded to. There were the National Front and racism was ugly and nasty, and you was always mindful where you were walking. Basically, you're always mindful of that, and but luckily in a place like Wolverhampton, which I think is underrated, the community, everyone came from the northern part of Jamaica, so people came from Westmoreland, St James, and Hanover.
Oh, my mum's from Westmoreland as well.
Oh, seriously? Where?
Betheltown.
Oh, Bethel Town. Okay, yeah. So it's interesting because it all came from, and everyone was related.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, that concept, the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. That was my upbringing. Everyone knew each other. There was either related through birth or marriage, or and everyone was connected in different ways, and people looked out. I mean, maybe it wasn't complete that, but rose tintedly, it felt like everyone looked out for each other. You know, and I can remember the stories when my dad first came to Wolverhampton, and there'd be like 14 guys sharing a house, doing shift work. No different to what's happening now with Eastern European people. Nothing's moved that changed that much, isn't it? Fundamentally, things are still the same when you're a migrant coming here, and all of them, they worked hard. The mother country sapped the youngest, the talented people from the Caribbean and Africa and Asia to come to Britain, and they faced the colour bar. We all know about that. But what was interesting, actually, my parents never ever talked about their experiences of the racism they face at work or on high streets, on public highway. They never talked about it, never shared those experiences. It's unlike now when they're reminiscing, they start to share these stories, but they never ever told. We knew, we felt it, especially if my dad had a hard day at work, he had the licks and beats, then you knew, okay, something happened at work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was, but and I think one of the reasons why and I think this applies to lots of households, not just Caribbean ones, all kind of migrant households, they wanted to create a safe space for their children to flourish. Without, you know what I mean? They might tell you, the only thing they'll tell you have to work twice as hard. Apart from those messages where you have to work twice as hard as your white counterpart, they never really went into great detail about the racism experience. And working in health for many years, and you see the increasing dementia rates in the women's generation. I believe that lots of them, absorbed that racism, that discrimination, the impact of racism, that had an impact on their bodies. And that is why I think we've got so many people having high rates of dementia at an earlier age. And even in people, I mean, a good friend of mine, Barbara Campbell, and she died last Christmas, 62 years old, died of dementia. How can a 62-year-old die of dementia? And so the impact on the impact of racism on our bodies is amazing. It's not. We don't properly compute that. In terms of health policy, social care policy, how we articulate that. It's only of late because of Black Lives Matter, we're now kind of shouting this out even more so. But anyway, so in a nutshell, I mean, but I had a happier childhood, I have to say, with my sisters, and we're quite close. We're very close in family. We're very close. We're actually even closer now as a family through lockdown, because we're doing Zoom calls. We do weekly Zoom calls with the whole family and stuff like that.
Can I kind of jump in a little bit, because I mean Pat asked me to try and do this as a bit of a kind of conversation as well. I mean, we're of the same generation, I think, and I'm originally from Walsall, just up the road, from Wolverhampton. For those that don't know that, being the same generation, we would have grown up together. During the years of the Rivers of Blood speech, the aftermath of that. Can you say a little bit about the kind of impact that you saw of that at the time? Can you remember what that was like?
Well, the funny thing about it, Roger, Enoch Powell was a local MP in Wolverhampton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And actually he was there when my junior school was opened, when I was about 6 years old. He was there. I don't remember, didn't know who he was at the time, but I can remember there was about half a dozen of us. We were pushed in front of this, where they were unveiling the plaque for the school, and what I found out in the years afterwards. Obviously we know about Enoch Powell's speech, Rivers of Blood speech, but obviously there was an increase in hate crime after we speak to Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
A lot of people got attacked. They gave that permission for Black and Asian people to be attacked in the streets by white fascists and racists. Number one, but more importantly, which had a more direct impact on me, was in his speech, which is quite important. It's like full circle, actually, Roger. In his speech, he said that immigrant children, because we were classed as immigrant children, we weren't classed as British.
Exactly,
we were classed as immigrant children.
Yeah.
You know, that was a label that was given to all of us.
Yeah.
When you were born here or you came as part of that Winners generation's children, you were classed as immigrant children. Immigrant children would bring down the educational standards and have an impact on white children. And what happened was a lot of segregation was going on in Wolverhampton. So schools would deliberately not have too many Black and Asian children in certain classrooms. Very similar happened in Deep South America under Jim Crow. That was happening in the UK and happened in Bradford as well, by the way. And so some of us got busted. I didn't realise that until years later. I was actually bussed around. Me and my sister, who was a year younger than me, we got bussed around to different schools before because we were part of that baby boom, you know, and there weren't enough schools being built. That's the school we went to. It was built. It was a refab. It was a rehab school, and they built that school within 4 months. How long would it take to build a school now? Probably about 2 years.
Yeah.
This school was built in 4 months, basically, and so because there were just too many kids of that generation, 60s babies, and then went to school, and but we got bussed around because they didn't want to make sure there were too many of us of the populated. But the funny thing about the school I went to, the junior school, which Enoch Powell was there to open, 70% of the children were Black and Asian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was interesting. And then about a couple of years ago, on the 5th anniversary of the speech, Central TV invited me and some other people to go back to my school in Wolverhampton just to reflect on, you know, as kids. And what was interesting, going to junior school, it's so diverse now. You got Black children, but you've got a whole range of children from Eastern European and different parts. But the thing about growing up in Wolverhampton, there were more Polish people and Italians than Black people living in Wolverhampton. But for some reason, that everyone was all targeted against Black and Asian people as coming and taking over stuff, which is crazy.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I remember because I started my infant school, literally must have been couple of months after the Rivers of Blood speech.
Mm-hmm.
I remember for ages after that, and it's really stuck with me how literally having to fight my way to school. And I'm like a 5-year-old having to fight my way to school. You know, it's just crazy. And then when you get to school, you get people calling you all sorts of things. And by the way, not just the pupils, not just you other students, but the teachers as well, with terrible stuff going on. And it must have been the same in Wolverhampton.
Oh, absolutely. But the worst thing about it, Roger, is a lot of Black and Asian kids, our peers, you know, some of us were lucky. We went on to, you know, do A-levels and go to university, but the vast majority were denied those opportunities because either were classed as educational subnormal, or they weren't given that extra push.
Oh yeah, I remember.
You know what I mean?
I remember the careers teacher.
Oh,
there's so many stories about careers teachers I've heard over the years. I remember mine because I went in there and I had every intention of being captain of Aston Villa in the winter and captain of the West Indies cricket team during the summer. That was what I was going to do. Now, and for me, that was entirely realistic. So I went in and I said that to the careers teacher. I remember the careers teacher just looking at me and saying, "Well, maybe you ought to join the army."
Yeah.
Right.
It was really funny you mentioned that because I used to have a paper round, and actually that was the thing there. That's everyone had paper rounds. Did you have a paper round?
No, I couldn't get one because everybody else had them.
At one stage, I even had 2 rounds. I don't know how I did that. I didn't have 2. Anyway, I had a paper round, and there was this one guy who used to deliver the papers. Now it'd probably be different now around child protection policy, but there was this old white guy. And he said, "Come here, laddie, and when you finish delivering your paper, just come around and I've got something to show you." So, nothing about child protection flagged up then. Went round to his house though, and he was ex-Navy, and he was showing me these pictures, telling me about his life, being in the Royal Navy, and I thought to myself, I could do that.
Yeah.
I didn't in the end, but I thought, but he actually was interested, and he was telling me about his life and his career and all that kind of stuff. It was really, really fascinating. But but my teenagers is interesting because during the 70s, it was the main. I mean, the main music was dub.
Yeah.
And that was quite big in the Midlands. Everyone, and like all my friends locked up and stuff like. I never locked up before.
No,
but I went to the other side. I became a soul boy, and they said pissed out at me, and so like sold out, man, literally sold out. You should be kind of locking up and get into the into the roots of Jamaican music and because that was the way that people could define their identity and almost like a defiance to what we call Babylon. We don't use the word Babylon like we used to. We say Babylon all the time.
Maybe we should start using it again. We should start using it again. I think.
Yeah, we should use it again. Listen, don't say Black Lives Matter. Just say Babylon.
Babylon. I think so.
Yeah, but what was interesting is, I mean, I used to be a Wolves fan. I mean, I live in London now. I've been an Arsenal fan for many years, but I was a Wolves fan, and I stopped going to the Wolves matches. I was fearful for my life.
Yeah.
And that was with the home supporters.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I can remember watching a match. I think I saw one of the matches between Wolves and West Brom. And that was the only time I saw about 5 black people all on the same pitch playing. It was amazing. Laurie Cunningham,
Regis, Batson.
Yeah, Regis, yeah. And then Wolves, we had
Bob Hazel, probably.
Brendan Baston. No, he was from West Brom. We had
Big Bob Hazel.
Bob Hazel. We had a couple. But you know what? Those players had it in the neck from the home fans and the away fans.
Oh, George Berry, that was it.
And George Berry with big afro, yeah. And and people used to throw freppancies and bananas on the pitch and stuff like that. It was just outrageous. And I stopped going because I was just fearful. I used to go with some friends. I can't go down. It's really intimidating.
I mean, I'm a Villa supporter, and I for years I had the same thing, avidly going to watch Villa, and then I just stopped because I couldn't deal with this stress every Saturday. Having to, well, who are we playing? If I go, is there a black player on the pitch? Yeah. Because if there is, I ain't going, basically, or I'm going to have to put up with all of this nonsense going on.
Yes.
And it's just crazy, absolutely. And then they turn around. So they give the abuse, and you tell people to stop and all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they turn around and say, "Yeah, but we don't mean you. You're one of us."
Yeah.
And you be like, "What?" But I'm not one of you because I'm not a racist, right? I'm not going to put up with that sort of stuff. And occasionally, being attacked by your own supporters, which happened a couple of times.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's a hustle.
I just stopped for years. Years and years. I stopped going.
Yeah. It's with my mum used to work in a hotel called the Mount Hotel in Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
That was a hotel where all the away teams used to stay. So I don't know. I lost it now, but I don't know how she did it, but I got the autograph of the Leeds football team, and Leeds were the top dons then. They were like the equivalent of Liverpool now, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I had all their autographs. I don't know how she did that, but she somehow got these autographs of them. Which is worth a lot of money now. I don't know where it is. I've lost it.
Yeah, she probably got a kick off the Leeds because they were known for that. They probably gave her a kick and then signed the autograph. I mean, I'm thinking as well about that kind of experience of moving into work as well, because I'll say later on some of the issues that I had, but I remember. Well, I'll say this one story. I remember leaving school on the Friday with very little qualifications, starting work on a building site on the Monday. By the Tuesday, I was a subs collector for the union. And in those days, people got paid on the Friday, and it was actual money in a packet, money. So my job was to go on this building site and to try and collect money.
Yes.
For the union off people. And I thought I'd heard every curse word at black people by then, right?
Yeah.
Until I started on that building site, and then people started calling me names that I'd never even imagined, and throwing bricks at me, throwing tools at me. I don't think I collected a penny for that union, for the building union. I don't think I collected a single penny, but I collected a lot of abuse. from people.
Roger,
that was my introduction to work, you know.
Don't mention that in your hosting speech about not collecting money, otherwise you won't get a job. Respectfully. The general secretary is to raise money.
I've told everybody that one. It's too late. It's too late.
It's really funny. I did my A levels and all that kind of stuff, and I went to university. I went to Manchester Poly, and so I didn't get into the world of work till after university. So my world was like being a student. I lived in Manchester, I lived in Hume, Moss Side area, in the 80s, and I loved it. It was. I
was there. I was in Manchester. I was in Whalley Range.
Whalley Range,
in 87, 88,
yeah.
around there.
No, I was there 83, 84. So I lived in Hume in the old flats. And actually, my very first political campaign I got involved in as a student. I mean, it was during the time of the miners' strike, so there was lots of student sit-ins. There was a lot of issues to do. There was a whole stuff around, obviously, South African apartheid. There was a whole wave of activism going on then, which, in many ways has shaped me in all the stuff and why I'm still doing stuff even today. But the very first campaign I actually got involved in as an activist, some campaigning and all that kind of stuff was. There was a guy who lived in the same block as me, from Sri Lanka. His name was Viraj Mendes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Viraj Mendes. He was a student in Manchester, and his student visa was running out or something like that. He got married, didn't work. The marriage didn't work out, so he wanted to still stay in the UK. And he said to me, "Pat, I'm going to get deported. Can you help me? Can you come down to the Arndale Centre? And we can just do some posters and placard and do some campaigning." And I thought, yeah, why not? I can remember Arndale Centre every Saturday morning about 10:30, 11. There'd be about 4 of us, raining. Okay, it always rains in Manchester. Rains every single day in Manchester. I'm not joking.
It does, yeah.
That was my experience of Manchester. I can remember about 10 days of when I was there for 3 years when it didn't rain, but it rained every single day. And we're there just getting drenched with our little leaflet saying Viraj Mendes, he must stay in the UK because he might be attacked by the government there because he supported the Tamil Tigers. Anyway, so what happened with him actually? He eventually moved into a church.
Yeah.
And he lived in the church for about 5 years before eventually he was deported, basically, and that made sort of history of the church being sanctuary. So that was my very first campaign around deportation, and full circle, I'm involved in the Windrush scandal. It's just,
well,
amazing.
I mean, when you get back, we'll talk some more about the Windrush stuff in particular, because I mean, for me, that's one of the one of the defining issues of this time. We can't really talk about issues like, we can't talk about Black history. We can't talk about Black Lives Matter without talking about how Black lives clearly don't matter to politicians who made those decisions that impacted on that Windrush generation. Clearly can't. So we have so much evidence that Black lives don't matter.
Yes.
And so when people challenge us all the time about why do you use these phrases, Black Lives Matter? The kind of way that I often explain it to people is I say, well, look, if your house is burning down, and you turn to a neighbour and you say, "Look, my house is burning down," you wouldn't expect your neighbour to look at you and say, "Yeah, it might be, but what about my house?" Right? You'd hope that they would help you to put that out the fire. And our house is burning down, and we need people's help to put out the fire. And that's how I explain it to people, and I hope that gets across to people that we've never ever said that Black lives only matter. We've always talked about we shouldn't have to say that all lives matter, because to us it's quite clear to so many people that our lives don't matter at all. Because they wouldn't petrol bomb us, they wouldn't attack us in the street, they wouldn't stop us from getting jobs and all the rest of it. And so I think it's really important that we have that conversation about the Windrush stuff.
Yeah, very happy to do that. So I'll see you on the next half an hour or so, and I'll catch up with you soon, everyone.
Okay. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about some of my experiences, and maybe we can have a bit of a conversation as well before Patrick gets back to kind of get onto the second half of his experience. So for me, born and brought up in Walsall, in the Black Country. But my story starts even before I was born, actually, which sounds a bit weird. But my mum was walking down a street, not a dark street, not a lonely street. There are other people around, walking down the street in Walsall, pregnant. And she was attacked in the street by some racists. Teddy boys in those days were one of the main bunch of culprits. She was attacked and nearly killed. And it nearly killed me because she was pregnant with me. And that's the sort of stuff that was going on regularly at that time. And for me, we have to equate that to what's going on these days as well. And that is the experience up and down this country that many people are having to deal with now. So when we talk about Black History and Black History Month, I think it's easy just to say it's something that happened a long time ago and not realize that many of the things that happened 50 plus years ago now and longer are still happening today. And yet too many people turn around to us and say, yeah, but things have got better, Rog, it's loads better. And, all the evidence that I have tells me, you know what, there's so much evidence to say that it hasn't got better. Not when you are scared to send your children to school on a morning, not when you are still getting discriminated against in a search for a job or the search for promotion in your job. Please don't tell me that it's got better. What I think has happened is that some people have got better at hiding it. And I think these days, some people who used to hide it have decided they don't have to hide it anymore, because there's some politicians around this place, like the current occupant of the White House and like the current occupant of 10 Downing Street and some of their mates, who think they can say and do anything. They can call people who look like me pickaninnies. They can call Muslim women who are wearing the hijab. They can call them the letterboxes, and all of these things are absolutely fine as far as they're concerned to go around and say. And they realize, I think some people think they don't realize the consequences of what they say. I think they absolutely do understand what they're doing, and they do understand what they're saying. And what they're saying gives power to people, gives authority to people to discriminate, not just in their words, but it allows them to feel that they've been given permission to discriminate in their actions against us as well. I mean, I remember, literally, I think I mentioned it earlier on, literally having to fight my way to school every morning, literally, as a 5-year-old, having to fight your way into school, fight your way in while you're in school, having to put up with not just racist classmates, but also teachers who couldn't give a toss either about what was happening to you. They couldn't care in those days. They really didn't bother about what was happening to you. And some of them participated. I remember being called, there's one particular teacher I remember called me a racist name in class while I was a little kid, right? And you don't know as a little kid about how to deal with stuff like that. You just don't know. And then when you finish school, you got to fight your way back home as well. And I literally only lived, as Patrick was saying, he was bussed around a little bit. My infants and junior school was 10 minutes walk from where we lived. But that 10 minutes was horrible every day, there and back. And then sometimes arriving back home to find racist slogans daubed on you on the wall of your house. And sometimes having to put up with dog mess thrown through your letterbox in the evening, or petrol bombs thrown through your letterbox. We lived brought up in a terraced house, and in that terraced house, the front room, which was the posh room, nobody ever used really. It was only like when the priest came round, or insurance salesman or something, they were able to be in the front room. Or later on, when the cricket was on, Dad was banished into the front room to watch the cricket on his own. But that room was the best room. And from the front door, through that room, into the living room, we used to have plastic put down from that front door through to the living room because of all the stuff that used to get thrown through our letterbox. And we used to have to keep a bucket of water by the front door because of all of that stuff. And that's the reality of then. But I'm hearing this is the reality of what is going on now in this country, not just 3,000 miles away. This is happening in this country. And also when people tell us that the Black Lives Matter stuff started with George Floyd, it didn't. And we have to be really clear about that. It did not. This started way before this, right? So when people start saying turn the moment into a movement, it's already a movement. It's already a movement that's been going on for some considerable time. But some people just haven't been listening to what we've been saying about the racism that we've been facing for years. And again, not just in the United States, but in this country as well, with so many deaths in custody in this country of Black people, and not one single person prosecuted for the deaths of any Black people in this country. I said earlier on that I was an Aston Villa fan. Well, former Aston Villa player Dalian Atkinson, who was killed by the police outside the home of a relative, right? No one's been prosecuted for that. Nobody, right? And he's got a name. You know, he was fairly famous in the area, but nobody. You know, for people far less famous than Dalian, who have not seen any justice in this country. I remember my mum, who was a cleaner when we were growing up. She used to clean at Walsall Town Hall, and used to have to go across the road to clean at the health authority. And she used to say to us, particularly in these months of the year, that me or my brother, or preferably both of us, had to come down and meet her after work, regardless of what we were doing, or regardless mainly of what we wanted to be doing. That's what we were instructed to do, because she used to get attacked. And how does that feel for anybody who's on this call, when you know that your mum is going to get attacked? The only thing that you can do is to try and stand in front of these racists and stop them from attacking your mum, because that's what they used to do. So there was a walk from the town hall to the bus stop, or if we didn't have enough money for the bus, it was a walk up the hill from the town, from the health authority, from the city centre, from town centre, up to where we lived. And that was our reality. You had to be careful about where you went. You had to be careful about who you talked to. But you also had to have those lessons that parents have to give other Black people, give to their kids. Like I remember the morning of starting secondary school and being pulled into that famous front room, that room nobody used, and being told, if you get attacked at school by racist kids, and it's quite likely that you will, then just make sure you have your back to the wall so they can't get behind you. And that was the sort of advice we had to have because of what happened. And when we went into work, it was the same advice, and we had to have this calculation. And people on this call, I think, will probably relate to some of this, if you're of my age group, that you'd ask yourself questions about, if I apply for a job at that particular workplace, do they have Black people there? Because there's two things about that. Firstly, it's hard to be the first, right? But secondly, you have to have an idea that they'll actually employ Black people, right? And that was a calculation that we made all the time when we were applying for jobs. And I'm leaving school. I left school in 1979. And there was 13 million trade unionists at that time in TUC affiliated unions, and there was, but it was literally starting school months after Thatcher. Well, literally a month after Thatcher got elected, I started work, and that's those calculations were really important. And as the economy started to drop, and as you started to see the rise of the right, encouraged by the Thatcher rhetoric of being swamped and all the rest of it, these were really difficult times for us. And that's why we saw uprisings taking place across the country during the early 1980s, because people had enough of being told it was our fault, being stopped and searched in the streets by racists routinely. We just knew if we went out, that was going to happen. But we also knew there was a high chance if we went out that we were going to run into trouble with racists. There's a part of Walsall, I remember when I did go to work for Walsall Council eventually. I remember there's a particular part of Walsall called the Beechdale. And in the Beechdale, it was known by us in the black community as being an area full of racists, basically. It was the home of the National Front, that particular area. And I went to work in what was called neighbourhood officers, so neighbourhood housing officers. And I went to work in one of these offices. And we used to have to do a late night on a Thursday, I think it was. And I remember being in the office doing my turn of doing the late night. And I started seeing all these people gathering outside the porter cabin where the neighbourhood office was based. And I started walking over to the window all stupidly, thinking, well, what's going on outside? And the neighbourhood officer, the head of the office, came over and literally jumped on me, dragged me, threw me under the table. And I'm thinking, I'm going to get into a fight with him. What the hell's he doing, right? And literally he said, that's the National Front outside. What do you think you're doing, right? And then they had to smuggle me out of the office so that I could get home, right? So they had to drive me out of the office, smuggle me out the back of the office, put me in a car and drove me up the road to a bus stop. Unfortunately, they didn't even drive me home. They just drove me to a bus stop, right? But that was what we had to put up with. But I still had to go and work in that office. And then when racists were coming into the office, then it was a thing about how did the rest of the people deal with racists in the office? So if I got abused in the office as a housing officer, was a trainee housing officer, which is what I was for 3 years before I became an assistant neighbourhood officer. How would other colleagues deal with the fact that you were getting racially abused in the workplace? Well, my experience of that wasn't good, in that a lot of people would just try and usher the person away and try and apologize. Well, how can I help you? Instead of just banishing that racist from the office, which frankly should have been what the response was, and making sure they didn't get service in that office. But I know that this is, people who work in the health service, I know, face this stuff every day. I know that they do, right? And I know that just after the referendum, when I went around to some offices and to some hospitals and to talk to some of our members, some of our black members would come up to me and say, this is what we were told. We were told, why are you still here? We've been told, don't touch me by patients. Don't touch me. I don't want that rubbing off on me, right? This is the sort of stuff that goes on today where our members work, right? And we have to understand that Black history isn't something that we can just look back on. It's something that we have to learn from, about how we dealt with things properly or how we didn't deal with things properly, to inform us how to deal with things better today. And I think those are the things that I want to look at. I'll finish my comments with this now, because it'd be good to hear from some of you and any questions and comments that any of you might have. But for me, Black History Month, we need to see Black History Month as being beyond October. I went for years and years, frankly, without ever even really recognising the Black History Month, and certainly not, even though I was invited to speak at some meetings in Black History Month, refusing to do them. I said, invite me in February, invite me in May, invite me in April, and I'll come along and I'll come and speak to you as long as you want, and take as many questions as you want. But we need to collectively, Black and white people, understand that the biggest lesson from history, as far as I can see, whatever month it's celebrated in, is that the only way, you don't fight racism with racism, you fight racism with solidarity. That's how we defeat racism. We defeat racism by standing by each other and with each other. And that's what I learned from history, right? That people have to listen to us as Black people and understand our experience. They have to do that. But what they also need to do is stand with us, believe us when we talk about the things that have happened to us, but also stand with us. Don't stand in front of us and try and speak for us, but stand alongside us when we stand up against racism, because that's what's needed now. Some really difficult conversations with people who think it's all right to abuse us, who think it's all right to treat us like something they've scraped off the bottom of their shoe, right? Too many of our colleagues do that, but certainly too many people in positions of authority seem to think that they can do that as well. And it's only when we stand together that we can make a real difference. So those are my kind of comments. I'm happy to take any questions and or listen to have a conversation with you.
Thank you very much, that was extremely interesting. I have a question from one of the radiographers who work here in NHS, right? And I think they'd like your views on the term BAME, because they feel as though it could be a separatist term, yeah, and it separates us from our white colleagues. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I don't like the term BAME or BEAM or any of those acronyms. I just don't like them. I choose, if somebody has to refer to me in those sorts of terms, then I'm happy to be called Black. And the best way I've heard described about why that's important is that it's a political definition, first of all. And I think Sivanandan, who used to be the editor of Race and Class, that brilliant journal that everybody should read, as far as I'm concerned, he described it as black is not the colour of our skin, it's the colour of our politics. And it was a way of uniting people of African and Asian descent in particular against the racism that we were experiencing, both in under colonization, but certainly in this country as well. Because I remember too many times where racists who were making no distinction about calling us a black whatever, and 4 doors away, the Asian family who lived by us, and calling them a black whatever as well. They might have added some other expletives as well, but to all of them, we were black. It was really important, particularly during that period, that we had a solidarity with each other, that we formed a solidarity that was going to help us to defeat the racism that we were experiencing. Now, the other point to raise about all of that, of course, is that it's not compulsory for people to call themselves black, right? Because a lot, it's a self-definition. So if people are comfortable with calling themselves Beam or BAME or BAMI or whatever, that's entirely up to them. I'm saying, for me, I choose a political definition. I will not be reduced to being an acronym. I'm a political person. And it is really important to me to have solidarity with people of Asian descent so that we can stand up together against the racism that we experience. So for me, black is a really important expression of who I am.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for that. Can I ask, now, I know there are a lot of us online here. Can I invite questions for Roger, please, on anything that we've spoken about or anything that you have in your mind that you would like to hear his views on?
Yes, I have one. Roger, it's Gina Stone, Branch Secretary.
Hi, Gina.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm good, thank you. I don't know why I can't get my picture up there. I've been on Teams all afternoon. Maybe they're sick of seeing me. That's probably what it is. But thank you, welcome. Really, really good to see you here. I've got a question to you. Probably need a bit of advice, actually. I get a lot of members come to me and where they felt they have been discriminated through either career pathway or through patients that have discriminated them against the colour of their skin. And when I have brought this towards the heads of workforce with complaints or support, we've always been told, well, we need evidence. Where's the evidence? And I go back to the member and say, you know, we need a bit of evidence to take this forward. Everybody backs off. How can I reassure my members we can do something for them positively? And so there's no repercussions for them, because I'm finding time and time again, and it's so frustrating because I want to help members. I get it completely. I'm half Greek. I had a little bit of, I was always called half a bubble when I was in the primary school, and it's not nice. And I want to help members to be able to make sure that they go through the right career pathway. If they are called a particular name from a patient, because they won't be touched. And we see information on our intranet from members of staff that have made complaints, and we get calls from workforce saying, we've seen this, how's the best possible way to deal with it? We need evidence, we need evidence. But every time it seems to sort of close and the problem goes away. It doesn't go away, it stays there. But what I'm just asking for opinions, or what is the advice that we could perhaps get, either some sort of campaign or drive it forward and have confidence for our members to speak up and not shy away, because this is every day. Thanks
for that, Gina. I mean, I think there's loads of answers to that, and it depends on what is going on, to which is the right one. I mean, obviously, there's going to be personal cases that need to be dealt with as personal cases, confidentially, and all the rest of it. But you know, there's for me, it's how we turn anti-racism, how we turn the fight for equality, social justice into a collective issue. Because for me, it's the collective that makes the difference. So if the employer simply isn't treating these issues properly, and there's so many issues coming up all the time, that's saying to me there's something more deep-seated, and we know that's the case in the health service, because you know I mean, one of the things that we're not short of in issues about race equality is we're not short of reports telling us what the problem is. You know, that we have countless reports. What we're short on is people actually doing stuff about it. And I think that's why we can deal with the individual cases, but the union gives confidence to people by taking these issues up as collective issues. So we campaign against racism broadly, you know, so we should be present in big numbers at anti-racist marches, at anti-racist festivals, anti-racist rallies. We should be there at those things, but we also need to have the campaign within the workplace as well, forcing the employer to live up to their responsibilities in the workplace and do the things that they're supposed to do to look after people, and have a zero tolerance towards racism. Because actually, but sometimes what I've seen in the past is some employers will say, yeah, we just need more evidence, we just need more information, come back to us when you've got more information. They're often telling us that because really they don't want to deal with it. Right? They really don't want to deal with stuff because it's just too difficult, or maybe they don't care. Right? I don't know. It could be any of those things. And we have to,
yeah, absolutely.
You know, we have to make them be bothered, and that is our job as trade unionists, really, to make them live up to their responsibilities. You have loads of policies already, right?
Yep.
And the employer just bats it off. You just need to come back to us with more information, more evidence, and so on. What about them dealing with the racism that they already know exists within the workplace? What are they doing? Right. So maybe we need to be asking them for evidence of their actions as well.
Absolutely. It seems like, you know, the annual staff surveys, the same type of messages that come through, but where do they go?
It's across the whole health service, Gina.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hear it. And it frustrates the life out of me, and it must do for the members, because it feels like we almost feel helpless in a way, but we don't want to be. We want to obviously work alongside the members and with the management. However, something needs to change.
But we have to give them confidence, Gina.
Yeah, we do. And the campaigning is absolutely right, what you're saying. And maybe that's something that we need to go back into our branch and be more visual around the workplace.
But there's two kind of focus of the confidence. There's the confidence that we have to give members as a trade union, but you know, the employer's got a responsibility. We're not managing the workplace for them, right? Their job is to do what they're supposed to do and stamp out inequality in the workplace, which is what all their policies say they're supposed to do, and actually the law says they're supposed to do, to some extent as well. And what they do is they bat it away and try and get somebody else to do this, this, and this. The employer has to give confidence to all the employees that if an issue is raised, that they will treat it properly. The member of the union has to understand and has to have confidence in the union as well, that if issues are raised, that it's going to be dealt with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some work to do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we all
Thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Oh, Pat, you coming in? In that case, can I invite Janet to speak? Janet, you had a question?
Yeah,
hey,
no.
Hey, Janet, how are you?
Hi there, Roger. Roger's heard this from me lots of times, but I will say it again because I think it's important that everybody on the call, especially those working at UCH, obviously do know this. And yet again, and it's a pity she's not here today, and I won't break, confidential information, but I was with a member today from your neck of the woods, Roger, and a black nurse, my vintage. I think we're all similar age and being generous there, give or take 5 years, 5 or 10. And anyway, long story short, just really, it wasn't so much the incident that she was seeing me about, but I feel terrible having to say to the 99% of members I represent who are black. There's been one white person I've represented in the last 4 years. Do you feel this is racist? And their response, they're a nurse who's coming to the end of their career, is that they don't know that they can prove there's any evidence. But actually, it's not at all surprising that the highest she could get was a band 6. What's really sad is she felt bad telling her black friend she'd finally achieved a band 6, because her story about her friend in the Midlands was the 10 interviews she went for before she retired. So she was sort of grieving her friend's career progression as well. And I mean, there is evidence at UCH and we've asked for it, and there's evidence on certain wards, and it is so obvious the difference between, it's literally band 5 black, band 7 white, and it's that clear, and it is outrageous in this day and age. I wanted to raise 2 things and see really if any members around the meeting today can comment on it, or stuff that as the group, the Black Members Group, and myself and Gina, we need to work on. This member also is over the age of 55 and is black and hasn't even been offered or brought in for a COVID test. They are off sick, but that should have happened the minute the first death occurred. So that's awful. So I just wanted to know really from other people around the room if they feel that as they're, because they're black or where, however they term their ethnicity, whether they're now being offered COVID tests where they wouldn't have been before. That's the first thing. And then just the other thing I wanted to say, if you like, try to talk a little bit about the resistance, because Roger has spoken at I'm biased, but I think it's one of the best fringe meetings we have at national conference every year, but it's been official once, which is the Stand Up to Racism, where we have fantastic music and fantastic speeches. So number one, quick question to Roger, which he can answer later. Should he be elected as our General Secretary? And anyway, whether you were or not, Roger, I hope we can push to make sure that becomes an official fringe, because it really should be. But also to let people know 2 things. One is some very good news across the globe. In Greece last week, there was a historic victory for anti-fascists in the courts, where Golden Dawn, and I haven't got time to go into it, but they're a proper fascist party, a Nazi party. They base their activities the way the Nazis did in the 1930s. They have, from the 1990s, attacked and killed immigrants and left-wingers and trade unionists. And they were taken to court over 5 years ago, 68 of them, and they've been charged and found. The party, Golden Dawn, having got into Parliament, has been found to be a criminal organisation, and people are going to prison. And the anti-fascists, quite rightly, are celebrating that. And it does show that black and white people on the streets calling, fascism out and Nazi and horrendous racist attacks does make a difference. That's number one. Number two, sadly, you know, what Roger was talking about that happened in the 70s and 80s, and I know the racism's more subtle now, but as I started my contribution talking about, I heard about it today firsthand of now into, you know, 2020. I think that with an economic crisis, that's where racism flourishes, and we ain't seen nothing yet kind of thing. So we have to be ready to be out protesting. And this weekend there is an international Stand Up to Racism conference, and I will, our branch is affiliated, the national union's affiliated to Stand Up to Racism. So I think if I forward an email, sorry, I've got carrot stuck in my throat, to Gina, people can choose to go. I mean, it's online, so you will hear people like the lawyer for the anti-racist in Greece speaking. You will hear a Brazilian anti-fascist talking about what they're doing in Brazil against Bolsonaro. The brother of Mr. Camara, who was murdered in France simply for being black. And on Sunday, there's Diane Abbott, Kevin Courtney, lots of brilliant speakers and workshops about health inequalities for black people.
And me as well.
I really think it would be really brilliant if people want to go to those things. We have to also talk about how we're going to fight this and how we do win equality, because otherwise it gets too scary and depressing. Thank you very much for letting me share.
Cheers. Janet, I mean, so I'm speaking at this thing on Sunday as well, because I think it's really, really important that, as you say, that we do double down on our resistance to racism at this moment, because we are about, well, in fact, we're already in the recession, but it's how deep the recession is going to go is the issue. And what we know from history is that when recessions hit, is that we get the blame as black people, and then we start getting attacked in the streets, but also our jobs start to go, the jobs that we've worked really hard to try and get into in the first place, that those jobs suddenly are the first ones to start going. In terms of the that rally at National Delegate Conference, regardless of what happens in the General Secretary election, I've supported for years that the idea that this should be a fully fledged part of the, not just a fringe, because I think it should be, I think there needs to be a real, and not just one, but I think there should be like a proper rally, an anti-racist rally as part of the conference. But also I'd hate to lose the social element that makes that particular event so good. So I think there needs to be more than one, but I think they should both be set. I think however many there are, they should be officially part of the fringe or not even the fringe, but an official part of the conference business. You know, so we have an international rally as part of the conference, which I think is brilliant, where we bring together all our international speakers. Why can't we have an anti-racist type rally as well as having that social event? But you know, I mean, it is really scary when you look across all of the different areas that Unison has people working in public services, and you look at what's happened at COVID-19. And I remember during the lockdown, I mean, we were just about allowed to have some sort of social distancing events, and I live in Oxford just now, and I was asked to by our members of Oxfordshire Health Branch to go up and to do a commemoration, take a knee basically for George Floyd, and I did do that. And what the branch, the black members group within the branch said was that what they wanted to do was to read out the names of all the Unison members who died as a result of the pandemic. And so we took a knee, and they read this list out, and they read this list out, and they read this list out. It went on and on. And what was really noticeable was the easily identifiable names of people who are black on that list. And we can't allow this government, who have blamed public service workers, who are about to blame public service workers even more for their mishandling of the pandemic. We can't allow them to get away with that again. Too many people have died, but in particular, black people have borne the brunt of this pandemic as well, and we can't allow that to continue. So this is where, again, we have to be, organising is the thing that makes the difference. Standing up and making our voices heard is what makes the difference, and not just waiting for the employer or certainly not this government out of the goodness of their heart, because I'm not sure they have a heart, frankly, thinking that they're going to do something for us without us making them do something, right? That's what's going to make a difference when we stand up and we get organised and say, you ain't going to kill any more of us off. You're not going to force so many of us back into unsafe workplaces, which is what is happening across the social care sector for sure. So many of our people are being forced back into what are really unsafe workplaces, you know, and it's yet another reason why we have to bring the social care sector back into under public ownership, frankly. Because when I started as a trade union rep for the National Union of Public Employees in the early 1980s, I represented what was then called the social services branch. And I represented people who worked in care homes, and it was almost entirely public, you know, run by the council, almost entirely. Now, 90+% of care homes are run by the private sector. And some of our people are being forced to go into those workplaces, forced to go into care homes, told that if you don't come into this home and sleep in, right, if you don't come in and sleep in, then frankly, don't ever come back, you're losing your job. And those are the sort of things that are happening, and why it is important that we build strong trade unionism particularly the care sector, but particularly while it's in the private sector, but also why we have to work really hard to bring that sector back under public ownership, because in the end, at least there'll be some accountability. We'll still have employers to fight. Make no bones about that. But at least we'll have some accountability around it, rather than these people who are just making a profit out of it at the minute. I've seen that Patrick's rejoined us.
Yeah, hi there, Roger. It's passionate talking about your role. Was fantastic.
No, we're just about to get into bad mouthing you now, because we've run out of things to talk about. So we can. No.
I can't believe. I find it hard to believe. I find it hard to believe. I really do. Seriously, you're training. You've run nothing to say. Come on.
I mean, should we maybe go back and chat about the kind of Windrush stuff then?
Yeah, sure.
Because people have probably had enough of hearing me kind of go on for a little bit. So. For me, as I said earlier on, this is like one of the defining issues of our moment. It seems to me, so many people, so many families affected by this. My family's been affected by the Windrush scandal, and so I've got people in my family who are worried about their status, who are worried about what's going to happen to them. I do. Before I ask you to say something, something just popped in there. I remember when the Immigration Act of '81, was it? Yeah. Came in, and I remember the discussions that were taking place in our house at the time, and I remember my mum and dad asking me for advice, because by that time I was working for the council. So obviously I knew how to give advice, they thought. But I didn't really know anything about immigration. And they weren't getting really good advice, it seems to me anyway. But I remember the form that they had to fill in for naturalisation, was it? Yes. At the time. And the difficulty that they had doing that, because they didn't have all the papers. Hadn't kept everything, and I remember that was one of the issues that was coming up during this whole discussion about Windrush, was that people just didn't have the papers, and anyway, why the hell should they? They were British citizens after all.
Yeah, that's interesting to talk about the 1981. I can remember that well, because I remember at that time my parents had their Jamaican passports.
Yeah,
and the 81 Act, they had to make a decision. You either get rid of your Jamaican passport and get a British passport.
Yeah.
And so, I think, and with big reluctance. Fair enough. So I remember completing the forms for my parents to pay the naturalisation fee and all that kind of stuff. And actually, now we know they didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Because they were British in the first place. But so there's been a lot of misinformation over the decade by the government and also immigration lawyers, which has complicated the whole Windrush situation when people didn't need to be naturalised in the first place. And when I did my initial campaign around the Windrush scandal, one of the key demands I had was that people should be compensated for, especially those who paid for naturalisation in the 80s. Just think of PPI. Yeah, you make a PPI claim, whether consciously or not, you were ripped up by the whoever sold you the PPI. You got your money back with interest. This government's not even thinking about even acknowledging that they gave the wrong advice for legislation, and hundreds of thousands of people from the Caribbean and Asia who've spent loads of money to be naturalised. Just imagine how much that would be worth now. I think it was about, how much did they pay then? About 60, 70 quid? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
What would be the value of that today, Roger? That's 8%.
Yeah.
On top of that.
Well,
it'd be a good few thousand quid, wouldn't it?
Well, we see what people are having to pay now. For citizens, to have the right papers now,
Yes.
don't we? With all the stuff that's going on at the minute, and it's ridiculous amounts of money that people,
yes.
Low pay in the main, right?
Yeah.
Struggling to survive, probably doing more than one job, being asked to pay ridiculous sums of money. I mean, the union is helping people where we can with some of that stuff, but people shouldn't have to be put in that sort of position.
No, absolutely, and that's the heart of the matter around the whole Windrush scandal. So we're talking about schools, yeah. So just imagine you've got two kids at school, one black, one white. Both were born. Actually, maybe one of them came to, say, Warsaw as a 1-year-old, but most of their schooling life, primary school, infant school, primary school, secondary school, got jobs, worked in the factories, families. After the two, the black and the white one, identical jobs. Who do you think will be asked for their passport?
Yeah.
Well, that's a litmus question. Who would be who will be asked for their passport? And that is the heart of the Windrush scandal, because of the hostile environment policy, having either proof you've got a right to remain or you've got a fully fledged passport. And that's what was heart of that. Redefining what is Britishness, basically, and that was the heart of the whole Windrush scandal. And if you didn't fit into that narrow definition of Britishness, i.e., you've got no paperwork, you must be a legal immigrant. You have to be. But if you're a white person, do you have to have a passport to prove that you're British? No, seriously. 30% of people in Britain is estimated not have passports. Does that mean that we've started deporting people back to Norway, Scandinavia, who came here for the Celts and what kind of stuff? No, debate.
I mean, to me, we've got to find a way of, raising these issues with people in a way that goes beyond our community. Because what I find is that when we are able to do that, people get it. People get it. People do understand about just that basic unfair treatment about stuff, and I've found loads more people who get that than people who are hostile. Actually,
no, you're quite right, and that's the reason why I think the scandal forced the government to do not a complete U-turn, because we've still got the hostile environment policy. It's still going to be there till 2022, but when people start to share their lived experiences, like my late good friend Paulette Wilson and many others, start to go, to be brave. How many of us would be willing to share our stuff on national TV about our lives, so people can scrutinise your life, scrutinise your decisions, scrutinise everything about you. And that's what they did. All those Windrushers who shared their experiences of being in detention centres, being deported, threatened with deportation, losing their loved ones, all had to do that. And that touched the nerve in Britain. And I know that we know that with the structural racism, and we know the whole stuff around the far right, and we know stuff of degrees of intolerance at the time and hate crime. But it was one of those moments, you can class it as either a freak moment in history, or maybe it touched the nerve. Those lives of those men and women talking about the impact of the hostile environment on them and their families had a massive impact in Britain, and they still have that massive impact on Britain even now after the last couple of years. And it's what you said, Roger. People, when you look at it, these people are British. They've been treated shoddily, and they're working class.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't bankers. They're working class people being shat on, pardon my French, by the government, and that had an impact right across. And that's the reason why the government didn't. The government completely underestimated this. They naturally thought, that we can get away with this, but they didn't. Well, they didn't get away with it completely, but it touched a nerve. And I can remember when I did my petition, which went absolutely ballistic. People signed, about just under 200,000 signatures in less than about 2-3 weeks. But it wasn't the petitions. It was people were mobilised. People were raising concerns. MPs across. There was actually one of those few moments where, from UKIP to the most hardcore Conservative MP to the Greens and obviously Labour and Lib Dems, everyone said this is outrageous. They all said that. Even Nigel Farage said it was outrageous, believe it or not. But seriously, I was getting messages from UKIP people saying, "Patrick, we support you on this." What? Me? What? Well, seriously, it touched the nerve.
I'd be worried that they got contact details for me, to be honest.
No, it's Twitter, sadly. No. But seriously, it touched a nerve, and that nerve is really important because for many decades, as you know, in terms of policies around immigration, migration, and the public opinion polls for many decades, and every single general election, from that general election, it's in 1964 when the Conservative MP said,
Smethwick, yeah,
Smethwick MP. I'm not going to use those words he actually said,
no.
But basically the sentiment was, if you vote for Labour, you're going to increase immigration. You're going to have all these black and brown people taking over the country.
If you want an end for
precisely. Yeah. Well, from that time onwards, it's always been toxic. We know that every single general election, immigration has always been there, and then you have this quiet storm where all of a sudden those rules of engagement stopped, and people said, "Hold on, these people are British. They've worked hard. They've contributed to Britain. My best mates from the Windrush generation, my partners from the Windrush generation, my grandchild's nephew, whatever it is, everyone could connect with the Windrush generation, basically." And that was one of the reasons why, even now, people still talk about it. And so I was and you're quite right. It's one of those. If you were to look at British history, different key defining moments of British history and the black experience. Obviously, you can go to what happened with the Lawrences, the murder of Stephen Lawrence. Yeah, we can see that. You go back a bit further, the riots in '81. You go a bit back further. You go a bit back further and see the work what Claudia Jones is doing in the 50s and 60s, and the murder of Kestrel, Cochrane, and Notting Hill. And you have these defining moments in history where the public, doesn't want the right thing to be done. It doesn't happen. I wish it happened every day, but it doesn't. You have to wait every 10, 20 years. You have this moment where there's a consciousness, and people say we need to do the right thing. You know what I mean? So I think that the Windrush scandal, when they write and rewrite history books in the future, is one of those defining moments of where black lives did matter for a little while.
Talking about books, as you've just published, we need to give you a chance to talk about by the way, I'm still waiting for my signed copy.
You know, there's about 1,000 people waiting for the signed copy.
Yeah,
Roger.
I know, but it's worth a try. It was worth
every single day.
It was worth a try, though. You know.
No, you can try, man.
You don't get. That's what we always say as trade unionists. But so I haven't read it yet. So 100 greatest Black Britons, right?
Yeah.
Who is the greatest then to you?
Well, I mean, we've not done it in numerical order. We've just kind of gone through a process where we asked the public to nominate. We've got 1,000 nominations. I mean, it's based on a campaign I did 17 years ago.
Yeah. I remember that.
When people voted for Mary Seacole. But this time round, it's almost like a brand new campaign. We did. We asked for public nominations. Then we had a shortlisting panel that helped to shortlist, and then we used that eventually for people to be in the book. Seems to be a lot of feedback from someone.
Yeah.
So the book itself is not so much about saying who's the top one. I mean, we did it 17 years ago, but it's more about celebrating not just 100. Well, in the book, we've actually listed all the nominees that the public put forward as well. So and the reason why we've done the campaign and the book is because it's about Black Lives Matter. I have to say that again, in the sense that it was about there's been a whole debate every 10, 15 years. Britain goes through this crisis of identity. What is Britishness, etc. And when you have this conversation, what is Britishness, we're never part of that conversation. We're not considered. We don't even think that our views are not recognised. And that's what happened 17 years ago when the BBC did 100 Great Britons. It decided to have this debate about Britishness by going back into the history books to find out a Great Britain. But they worked on the basis that Black people weren't around. Or people became the Windrush, so therefore you still haven't contributed. We've been here at least 2,000 years. And actually, all the kind of early archaeological evidence, DNA stuff, Beachy Woman was a Black woman. So you're going back 50,000 years. So we've always been here. Okay, we've been here in greater numbers since Second World War, particularly around obviously time of Windrush onwards. We've come in greater numbers, but there has always been a Black presence. And not just a Black presence, there's been a Southeast Asian presence and a Muslim presence in Britain for a very long time. But the way it's been portrayed in the curriculum, on TV, it's a cross between EastEnders and Downton Abbey. That's the way I can describe it. But we fit in all that. EastEnders, okay, EastEnders, you will get the odd Black character occasionally, or Asian character occasionally. In Downton Abbey, I don't think so. You know what I mean? So it's just that kind of that's a narrow, myopic view of Britishness, which is exported. And when you talk to African Americans, they don't think we exist in Britain. Apart from they've heard of Naomi Campbell and Ainsley Harriott. Come on, please. Do you look like Ainsley Harriott? Actually, you could be Ainsley Harriott.
I knew you were going to say that, right? I cook better than him.
So, so it's about, but I'm sure you cook better than him anyway. But it's about interventions. I mean, so that's why we did a campaign. We've done it again, but this time around we were very lucky and fortunate that we got approached by Hachette to say, so we'd like to publish it as a book as well. So that's what we've done with me and my co-author and Dr. Angelina Osborne as well. And so it's 100 Great Black Britons. But also, what we've done also is about a schools competition. And we've also got schools competition to try and encourage schools and young people to get involved, to do their research around Black history and heritage in the UK as well. It's not about waiting for Black History Month and permission to do that. We should be doing it all year round, to be quite honest. And so that's why we're doing this. And in the book, I've been heavily attacked, by the way, Roger, in the media. I mean, the book itself, I think people, you can judge it for yourself. It's very difficult when who's in and who's out when you're doing a list, a book of this nature, because we had people in the original list campaign we did 17 years ago who are not in the book, because we wanted to update, You know, there's new heroes and sheroes. There's new historical figures that we want to approach us. And also we made a big effort to feature more people from the women's generation to be featured in the book. And I'm glad that we did that, because while we were writing the book, three members of the women's generation had passed away. It's even more critical that their stories and histories are documented and acknowledged as well. But and also, so anyway, so in the book, there is a whole. You will see people that you knew personally. Obviously, it's got lots of Bernie Grant. As you know, you're a chair of the Vernon Grant Trust. I'm vice chair. So Bernie's in there, of course, because of his ongoing legacy. He's been dead 20 years, but his legacy is even bigger than it was before. You know, and so we highlight and we've used particular criteria. And one of the criteria, it's not about being the first black person to do this or the first black person to do that. The question that the judging panels, we all asked is, how have you used your black privilege for the community? That was a question that we asked ourselves. So if you've been, so that's why we haven't got many black bankers in there, to be quite honest. No, seriously, there might be some doing some stuff, but we were looking, how have you used your privilege? And that was a key criteria. And that's why I've been attacked by some on the right that I haven't got any particular. I was on Radio Live 5 Live, and I was asked, yeah, in the book you've got Dawn Butler, you've got David Lammy, you've got Diane Abbott, Bernie Grant. This is a Labour book, isn't it? You've got all these Labour people in there. And I said, no, it's not a Labour book. It's a book about black people who've used their status to articulate the experiences or be involved to advance black communities. And they said, well, where's the black Tories then? You haven't got no black Tories in there.
Maybe they don't know anything.
What would you say then? I'm not going to stick black Tories in the book because the black Tories. If there's a black Tory that has done something for the community, yeah, fine, I'll do that. I mean, if you look at America, you got black Republicans. Some of them are still doing some good stuff. I hate the Republican Party, but at least there are some black Republicans who know the history of civil rights movement, and they do stuff in a particular way. You might agree with their politics, but you can see some of the stuff they're doing. You know, so it's not based with the Lib Dems, or Conservatives. What have you done with your status? That was a question that we kept saying to us all the time. And if the book inspires some black Tourists to do some stuff, good. I haven't got a problem with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where can people get the book and all the rest of it?
All good.
All good bookshops. I was trying to push on to so you could actually hold the thing up.
It's everywhere. It's in all good bookshops. You know, like your Foyles, your Waterstones, independent bookshops, and you can buy it online from most places. And a couple of black bookshops have got them as well. The book's only been out literally 3 weeks, Roger. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. So, you know, don't worry. Don't worry. As a chair of the Vernon Grant Trust, I have to sort you out. Otherwise, you won't talk to me again. I know you won't talk to me again.
No.
When we have our committee meetings, you're going to blank me. I know you are. I can tell.
I won't call your name when you put your hand up to speak. It's. I mean, for me, it's a really important book. It's really important that we remember people who went before us, but also we just get an opportunity just to learn from the experiences that people went through. And you know, there's people in that book already, just from what I know about it, who have made such a massive difference to our community and continue to make a difference to our community. And for me, that's the biggest message of a venture like this, is that will it inspire more people to make that step into standing up for our communities, you know, to making a difference to our communities. You'll remember, like I will, Patrick, about all of those. You know, there'll be lots of unsung heroes that we grew up looking at within our communities who did such good work just to organise our communities. You know, ranging from the guy when I was growing up who took it upon himself whenever the West Indies came over to play cricket. He was the one who organised the community and organised the coaches that were going to take us to Lords. For me, that act It wasn't just about taking people to watch a sporting event. It's about inspiring somebody like me. And I wasn't joking earlier on when I said that I really wanted to be the captain of the West Indies cricket team.
Oh, really? Okay.
But because it inspired me to love cricket. It inspired me to, I could see. I remember I was at the test match where there was the bomb scare at Lord's.
Oh yeah.
And I got to see Gary Sobers and Lance Gibbs. I got to see Lance Gibbs, the greatest spinner of all time, and mine's Shane Warne, right? Lance Gibbs destroy England, and so I got to see things like that, and it just inspired me into wanting to not just watch these people, but to be part of it. And it's that inspiration bit that always gets me. Can you actually inspire others as well as doing stuff yourself? And when we look back at, because a lot of the Black History Month stuff, still seems to be centered on the United States.
And
my daughter always says that she was fed up with Black History Month because it always all they ever talked about was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, all great people, and occasionally Sojourner Truth. She's named after Sojourner Truth, and occasionally Harriet Tubman. But outside of the States, Nelson Mandela, and that was pretty much it, really. And we need to do better than that. We have our own heroes to inspire us in this country as well.
No, we certainly do. And the campaign that I did 17 years ago, in the book, contributes to that as well, because I think we've got our own. I mean, if you look at the history of civil rights, our history of civil rights actually is longer than the American one.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to look at Olode Equiano, who's in the book. From Nigeria, went to America, bought his freedom, came to Britain, and started the campaign around being an abolitionist. Everyone talks about Wilberforce, that is always completely overshadowed in history. But there was a number of men and women during that period who were writing their memoirs and they're going on a speaking circuit, like we do now.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
and there was like one of the key chartists, William Cuffin.
Yeah, William Cuffin. He's in the book as well. And so the funny thing that really grates me, Roger, is if you look at the history or the genealogy of the Labour Party, the trade union movement, Black people have been there from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you look at the official history of the trade union movement or the official history of the Labour Party, they don't talk about us as if we just literally arrived from the 50s and 60s. But we've actually shaped that. Robert Wedderburn, William Cuffin, all these people played a key role. These were the genealogy of political mobilization, working class rights. And Black people were involved in that because when people were fighting for the rights around slavery, it was about working class rights. And it really grates me when I was heavily, I've been heavily criticised and around my concern around the Black Country flag, because the organisers of the Black Country flag seem to talk about working class history as if it's white working class history. They don't want to acknowledge our history of enslavement as if it's nothing to do with them. And that's the real issue. We still have issues in some elements of the trade union movement where they don't want to acknowledge that, we didn't get paid. At least you got paid. Okay, you might have horrible working conditions. We had no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
At all.
I mean, there was. I do want to kind of move towards a wrap up in a minute because I don't know, like everybody else, I've been on screen all day since about 8 o'clock. But
I know the feeling. That's the next world that we're living in, isn't it?
I mean, I just one thing I just wanted to add in terms of what you've just been saying about the trade union movement and our history, because and I don't know how many people on this call think that Bill Morris was the first Black General Secretary of a TUC union, because he wasn't. And the person who was the first Black General Secretary of a TUC union, and I'll say up front, he is not a relation of mine, but his name was Fred McKenzie. And Fred was the General Secretary of the union that made musical instruments for the military, right? And he was General Secretary for about 20 years, and he was General Secretary for about 15 or about 15 years before Bill Morris became General Secretary of the T&G. And when Fred retired, basically the union folded as well. They never had many members, but he was a lovely guy. I met him one time, and I know it's hard to imagine me being cheeky, but I was cheeky in those days as well. And so I just called him Dad, right? But he was a lovely guy, and never raised his voice when people kept calling Bill Morris, the first black General Secretary. Bill was the really important General Secretary, and never undermined that at the time the biggest union. But he was. But Fred McKenzie should never be forgotten. He was a trailblazer as well.
Well, we need to so we need to document that, Roger.
Yeah, it needs to be done. It needs to be done, and also the fact that there were 2 black trade unions in this country as well. One called these, and I apologise in advance for these names, but one was called the Coloured Film Artists Association, which was existed during the 1930s, and the other one was the Oriental Film Artists Association. And both of them were formed because the unions at the time and the employers used to basically run a cartel and worked out who was going to get employment within the film industry. And they're both based out at Elstree Studios in just outside of London. And basically they affiliated to join the TUC, and the TUC turned them down. The documentation around that is at the Warwick Museum of Modern Records.
All right, okay.
And it's really worth looking at, because the TUC used to document all of their meetings verbatim at the time. And the verbatim record of the meetings where those associations tried to get affiliation really reveal the level of racism that was around in the trade union movement at the time, in terms of, well, they all look the same, how can you tell which is different, and all of this sort of stuff. I mean, those are the sort of things that they said, and they turned their affiliation down. But you can see some of that information. Another great book, people should go out and get Patrick's book, but another great book that documents some of this stuff is a book called The Making of the Black Working Class in Britain.
Ron Ramadine's
book, which is an extraordinary book. It documents some of these incidents of our history, both within the trade union movement, but of resistance to racism as well, and how we went about it, and sometimes how we didn't have the support of the trade union movement behind us, and we had to do it ourselves, that self-organisation, basically. So
I've just been looking in the chat. There seems to be lots of conversations with people talking about the whole stuff around gradings at the hospital, and career barriers and stuff like that. It's just interesting that people are, even though we're having a great debate here, people are worried about the day-to-day existence of working in the NHS.
No, it was part of the conversation we were having when you went off the call for a little bit.
I missed that bit. Yeah.
So it was, but it is that thing of how we can marry the two things together, isn't it? Really, I suppose it's a good place to kind of move towards a conclusion. Is that how you marry what is happening to people in their everyday existence, which I suppose is part of what Windrush was about as well. Yeah. But how you deal with and organise around the big issues as well. The public policy issues, and make those get more people who are literally struggling to survive on an everyday basis, and bring that into that public realm, which is what I think you do really well, Patrick, actually, because you bring those two things together, because you're able, with your skills and experience, to be able to talk about what is actually happening to people through the Windrush and stuff, as one example. But and the black mental health stuff, which deserves a whole conversation in itself, frankly. All of those things, and how those things affect public policy, and I think that's a real skill, and I congratulate you for developing that skill.
No. I mean,
I think it's really important thing to do.
Well, I want to acknowledge you, and I wish you really well. I hope you get that gig, General Secretary. You got my 100%, 2000% support behind you. It's important. I mean, it's interesting you gave the history of there've only been two general secretaries in the last 70 years.
No, so altogether, three black general secretaries, all told, and there is one currently, right? And it's a shame because he's the general secretary of one of the largest trade unions.
Yeah,
Patrick Roach.
Of course, yeah. That's it. I was about to mention that. Yeah.
So, who incidentally is related to me? He's a cousin.
So it's in the genes then.
Yeah, it must be. But
you've adopted the name.
I should say I'm not allowed to use this as a election platform to talk about the election at all.
No, you didn't say that. I said that. You can't. No, we have to be obviously. Unison members, be objective. Vote for Roger McKenzie.
Well, I'm not. I think that's a good place to stop. Really. I mean, can I just from me, thank everybody for the opportunity to spend the evening with you. It's just been a blast. Actually, it's been a real pleasure, and the chance to talk to my brother Patrick, which we haven't had a proper chance to chat like this.
Absolutely, just respect to you, definitely.
We got to do it again. Got to do it again.
We have to do it again. Definitely.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone, and just hang in there, and just be inspired by the book 100 Great Black Britain. No, stop. No.
But it is an inspiring book. I can't wait to get my copy of it. Definitely. But I will buy a copy, Patrick, and I'll get you to sign it, because it's important that people buy books and don't just get given them. I think
there's too much freeness going on. Too much freeness. No.
It's important. Books are important to me, and it's important that people support authors, right? It's really important, particularly black writers who are cataloguing our history. We can learn from our history, and we can grow from our history. It can inspire us to go on and do great things. Some of the books that I've read about our history have done just that. I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing unless I read avidly about our history. It's really important. So I can hear the wine bottle being clapped next to me down here, and also I need more food.
Definitely.
Guys,
So can I thank you guys, Loxley and Pat in particular, for the invitation?
That's brilliant. I really thank you for great. It's been fascinating, and as you know, this event here was kindly hosted by Unison, and it's part of Unison Black members. And I urge you guys out there to become involved. We are stronger together as a unison, as a union. We are stronger together, right? We can fight this together. So I urge you, all of you listening here, to please get involved. Get involved in use, get involved with what we're doing, and get involved with our collectivism. But guys, thank you very much. I found that absolutely fascinating.
Thanks, guys. Invite us back.
Okay.
Definitely.
Bye, everyone.
I just want to say a big thank you to everyone. It's been a fantastic evening, very informative. We can't wait to have another session with you guys. Two big figures in the room. It's really great.
No, it's great. Great to spend time with you folks. That was really good. Thanks ever so much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Stay safe.